Welcome to Simply Excel. In this video, we're going to take it right back to basics and go through an introduction to using Excel for maybe the first time. Excel is a really powerful tool that a lot of businesses use, so it's really useful to know your way around it. This is the screen that appears when you first open Excel, and it gives you various options. We can either go straight to a blank workbook, we can go to the New menu, and that will give us various templates that we can access, or we can open an existing file. Back on the Home tab, you'll see that below our blank workbook, we've also got recent, pinned and shared files. So that's just quick ways to navigate to files that you've used before in Excel. For this tutorial, we're going to start a blank workbook. But before we get started putting any data into our sheet, I'm just going to give you a quick tour of what's available to you in Excel. So starting in the green bar across the top, we've got some common functions that are available in all Microsoft Office programs. So those are autosave, we can toggle that on and off, a save button, so you can quickly save your spreadsheet, and undo and redo buttons as well. Below this, we've got what's called the ribbon, and this has got a number of tabs that change what's available on the ribbon. And you'll see that each tab contains a whole load of shortcuts, and they're common things that you're going to do when you're using Excel. It's quite useful to maybe spend a few minutes just having a little explore of those tabs and seeing what's available to you. Just going to set it back to our Home tab for now because that's where most of our common functionality is held. Below our ribbon, we've got two areas. We've got our name box, which shows you the name of the cell we're currently in. So you see that's in column A in row 1, so the cell is called A1. If we were using things like tables, this name box would also display the table name. And then to the right of that, we've got our formula bar, and this shows you the contents of the cell. So if we put some text in our cell, you'll see that when we click on it in the formula bar, it shows you what's actually in the cell. If we put a quick formula in, so if we put in equals 1 plus 2, you'll see that it displays a 3 on our sheet, but when we click on that cell, it shows you that the actual content is that little formula of 1 plus 2. So that's the formula bar. If you've got a lot of text in your cell, you can expand your formula bar by clicking on this arrow here, and you'll just see that gives you a couple of extra rows available in there. And you can collapse that back by using the same little arrow on the right hand side. So the area below this is our worksheet, and you'll see that there's a tab at the bottom that says sheet 1. Beside that there's a plus, so we can add new sheets, and if we want to rename a sheet, we just double click and give it a name. And then right at the very bottom, in the bottom right hand corner, we've got our zoom, so we can zoom into our spreadsheet and zoom out, or we can use the slider. Now we know the layout of our spreadsheet, we can look at how we navigate around it. So I've put some data in. So the easiest way to navigate is just to use your mouse to select a cell, and you can click on your mouse and drag to select multiple cells. And when we select multiple cells like that, that's called a range, and that range of data is referenced by the cell reference in the top left, so A3, a colon, and then the cell reference in the bottom right, so C4. So if you see syntax like that in formulas, etc. in your Excel spreadsheet, you'll know that it's referencing a range rather than an individual cell. So you may notice as I move my mouse around the spreadsheet, the pointer changes. So you've got this simple white cross, which is our selector, and that will just allow us to select cells or multiple cells. If I select a few cells, I'm going to show you the move handle. This is really useful for moving data around your spreadsheet, and we access it by just moving our mouse to the border of the cell, and you'll see that we get this 4-pointed cross with arrows on it. If I click and hold that, you'll see it's moving that range of cells. If I release it, it gives me a warning that I've got data where I'm trying to move that data to, so it won't let me accidentally replace things. So I can cancel out of that. I could of course move this to an empty cell. I'm just going to undo that by using Ctrl and Z, and just show you the other option we have is to hold down Shift, click and hold the mouse button, and then when we drag you can see that it's going to insert these cells between two other lots. So I release that mouse button and it's moved our data and shuffled everything up so we don't have that blank row on the top, and we haven't replaced any of the data that we had. The next thing we're going to look at is the last thing available on a cell, which is the fill handle. This has loads of functionality. I'm not going to cover it all in this video, just going to introduce you to the concept of it, that if you click and hold the mouse button, you can drag and copy that data down, or we can use it to go across, and we can even use it on multiple cells. I'm just going to delete what's in these cells just by highlighting them and using the delete key to clear the contents. And then we're going to look at how the mouse changes when we navigate between our rows and columns. First thing you'll notice is when we come up to a column header, our pointer has changed to a black downwards arrow. And that means if we click it, it's going to select the whole column. Likewise, if we move it to a row, when we click it selects the entire row. We can also select multiple columns by clicking and holding and dragging our mouse across. And you'll notice that when you're selecting things, it's always highlighted in grey so you can see clearly what part of the spreadsheet you've got selected. Again, we can select multiple rows, and we can also select the whole sheet by clicking in this top left-hand corner where you've got this grey triangle. The next way that the mouse changes when we're navigating around columns and rows is when we move it between two columns or between two rows, and you get this cross that's made up of a straight bar and a double-ended arrow. And what this allows you to do is click and hold, and we can adjust the width of the column. We can also use this to double click, and you'll see that that then fits the column automatically to the longest bit of data that's in it. Again, we can do this with multiple columns, and you'll see where the column was wider than the data, it's actually made it narrower to fit the data. We can also use it to drag multiple columns, and what that does is it sets all the columns to the same width. So if you want uniform column width, that's the way to do it. Again, this works in the same way for rows. So if we highlight a row, come down till we get our black cross, we can drag and adjust the height of the row, and we can use it to double click and fit the row to the data that's in it. And of course you can do that on multiple rows. So you can adjust them all to the same height. You can auto fit them all in exactly the same way that you can with columns. If we wanted to insert rows or columns in our spreadsheet, there's a couple of ways of doing that. We can right click and insert, and you'll see that's inserted a column to the left of where we were. So that's the default behavior. Again, with rows, right click and insert, and the default behavior is to insert a row above where we were. You can also select a column and use Control and plus to insert a column, or Control and minus to delete that column. Again, the same thing for rows, Control and plus to insert another one, and Control and minus to delete them. We can also navigate around our spreadsheet using our keyboard, so we can simply use the down arrow and the right and left and up arrows to navigate around our data area. We can use Control and down arrow to jump to our bottom row of data, and Control and right arrow to jump to our right hand column of data, and our Control and left arrow and Control and up arrow to go to the far left or the top. And we can also use Control and home to jump back up to cell A1, and that will work from wherever we are in the spreadsheet. So if we select any cell, Control home just brings us back to the top left. And finally, we can use Control Shift and right, and that will select the data all the way across to the right, and Control Shift and down will select all the way to the bottom of our data. So that's a useful keyboard shortcut to know as well. Next, I'm going to go through some data entry tips, because it can be quite handy to know how you can increase your efficiency on adding data into your spreadsheet. So if we add a new student, I just started typing in the cell that I had selected, and then if I press enter, you'll see it's moved me down to the next row, and now we've got our student name in cell A12. If I need to amend this data I've just put in, there's several ways I can do it. With this cell selected, I can just start typing, and what that will do is it will replace everything in that cell with whatever I type. And that's the simplest way of just replacing everything in a cell. If I just undo that with Ctrl Z, another way I can edit what's in the cell is I can just double click on that cell. You'll see that's inserted a cursor into my cell which is flashing. I can use my arrow keys to move that around, or I can click elsewhere in my cell with my mouse. So if we want to amend this name to Kelvin, I can add the L, and again just press enter, and that's updated what I had in my cell. Another way I can edit it is select the cell I want to edit and come and click in the formula bar. And again, I can click anywhere in my cell contents and place a cursor in, move it around with the arrow keys, and just type what I need to type, add or remove things as needed. And the final way to edit the contents of a cell is to select the cell and then use the F2 key. And that again places that cursor at the end of the cell, and I can move it around and make my amendment. And as before, I can just press escape if I don't want to make that change. And we've reverted back to the original contents of the cell. So if I want to enter data in multiple columns and then move to the next row when I'm finished, instead of pressing enter after I put the first bit of data in, if I type the name in and press tab, and then let's say he scored 67 on his test, if I then press enter, you'll see that that's moved to the next row down. And you'll see the other thing that Excel's done is it's clever enough to notice that we've got a formula in this column, and it's suggesting that we might want to copy that down and apply it to the row we've just added. So it's automatically copied that formula down. If we delete that, I'm just going to show you how you can manually copy that formula down. So coming back to our fill handle, we can either click and drag, and that will copy our formula down, or we can double click on the fill handle, and if we have multiple rows, that will jump down all the rows, copying that formula. Finally, we're going to just look at some formatting basics. So I'm just going to expand our column out so we can see our full column header of student name. I'm going to select that row, and I'm going to use Ctrl and plus to insert a new row above it. I'm going to give it a title of test scores. And then what I want to do is I want to center that title across all my data. So I'm going to click, hold down the mouse button and drag across all the columns that have data in. And then I'm going to come up to a ribbon, and I'm going to use the merge and center shortcut. You'll see that's merged these three cells into one big cell and centered the data within it. I also want to make that data a bit more visible, so I'm going to make that bold by clicking on the bold shortcut in our font area of the home ribbon. Then I want to also make these headers bold, so I'm going to click on the row, and if I select the whole row and click on bold, you'll see that that's applied it to all three just in one click. And then how about we want to put a grid around this just to make it look a bit more like a table. So I can highlight my whole range, and here we've got our borders. So click on the drop down there, and you've got all the various options for borders that you can apply. So we can just pop borders around all the cells, and then maybe we want a thicker border around the outside. And you see that's made our table just a little bit neater and contained our data together. We can also add background fills to our cells and change the colour of our font. We can change the actual font itself and the size, and this is all up in the font area of the ribbon. Let's say, for example, we wanted to highlight every student who'd scored less than 70 on their test. Now I can use something called conditional formatting, which you can find in the ribbon over here. That's slightly more advanced, so I'm not going to cover that in this video. I've put a link in above to a video where I do touch on conditional formatting for highlighting overdue dates, and you can see some of the principles in there. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm just going to keep it simple, and we're just going to manually highlight those cells. We can click on that and change the font colour to red to highlight that. And if we want to do multiple ones, we can press Control, and that allows us to select multiple non-adjacent cells that again we can format in red. There's an even quicker way of doing this, so if I just undo what we've just done and select my cell that has the formatting that I want, and up in the clipboard area we've got Format Painter, and I can click on that and then click on another cell, and it will apply exactly the same formatting to that second cell. Another handy trick with the Format Painter is if I double click it, I can then apply that format to multiple cells without having to go back to the Format Painter. And when I'm finished, just use the Escape key to turn off the Format Painter. I hope you found this a useful introduction to using Excel. Please do check out my other videos which expand on some of the areas that we've touched upon today. And of course, please do like this video and subscribe to my channel for more Excel tips. Thanks for watching.